made me think this really, really happened.
Kids to come down here, visit all these sites, learn from all these people.
It just gave me chills.
Learn your culture, do your research.
I'm learning a lot that I haven't already known.
I mean, it just sort of felt like we were in it.
You look at things different when you actually go visit the places.
These have changed kids' lives. By having them go and seeing these civil rights monuments, listening to these stories, they understand now there's a lot of people that's paid the price for them to vote, get education, and be responsible for their own choice.
Henry Harper was a resource officer for Iowa City Schools when he helped create Fast Track, an educational program for black youth.
Then they came to me and said, hey, Mr. Harper, can we do our own thing? Can we create our own program?
During discussions, some of the students were repeating misconceptions and generalizations about the civil rights movement, until Mr. Harper had heard enough.
Well, let me just take you guys down south so you guys can understand more about the civil rights movement. So we originally started with just 2 vans, and we take like the first crew of maybe 15 kids.
Along with visiting monuments and museums, the trip also provides an opportunity to visit historically black colleges and universities. The impact was evident from the very beginning.
You know, I guess I really wasn't paying attention until Mr. Harper took us. And so the trip for me was eye-opening. It was amazing. It taught me a lot about the schools. It taught me a lot about our history.
Being able to really see and not just hearing it makes a difference. So it was just great.
Flash forward a decade, and the trip has grown immensely.
So we've taken 600 kids over the last 10 years. We have 100% graduation out of high school. We have 25 college graduates.
Each year, students, along with parents, chaperones, and community leaders, jump on a bus to travel a couple thousand miles to explore our nation's unsightly past and reflect on where the future leads.
To be there and to know that this legend was killed here and we got a chance to actually be there, it meant a lot.
It all just sunk in, like he was actually shot here. So I'm standing at the same place that he was standing at. It's eye-opening.
On April 4th, 1968, clergyman and civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and killed on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, which now serves as the National Civil Rights Museum. Visitors are able to see room 306 as it was during the final hours of Dr. King's life.
They kept it exactly how it was, and that was just kind of surreal for me.
Encountering the room that Martin Luther King Jr. was in right before he was shot and killed, it was powerfully moving for me.
From King's bedside Bible to the wreath on the balcony, every detail adds impact.
I think what stuck with me the most is like seeing the room, his final little moments. It really showed how like a normal day can turn so tragic.
The museum covers more than just MLK's assassination. From the history of the slave trade to the bus boycotts, from lunch counter sit-ins to the sanitation strike, the very reason King was in Memphis.
They kind of brought more to it, brought more information to me to understand the events that happened.
The museum takes you through 5 centuries of struggle in a way that leaves a lasting impression.
I was a part of everything that happened, even though it happened so long ago. To actually like be in it and like see what other people had to go through and like see all the struggles.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Located on the Mississippi River, Memphis quickly became Tennessee's largest slave trading city. A growing demand for cotton created a boom in plantations, along with a spike in the forced labor of slaves shipped in from Africa. While many supported this inhumane practice, this home represents those who fought against the slave trade. Jacob Burkle, a German immigrant and stockyard owner, helped harbor escaping Africans who had been separated from their families, stripped of their freedom, and sold to the highest bidder. Now known as the Slave Haven Underground Railroad Museum, the home is kept intact to preserve a story that was kept secret for more than 100 years.
being out here, actually being part of the history, it gets to your heart and it gets you more wanting to understand it.
Burkle and his family risked their lives by harboring slaves in their small cellar, which could be accessed through a secret tunnel.
Like, it's one thing to read about it in like a history book or a history class, but it's another to actually like walk down into the cellar, see the hole that the slaves escaped into. It's a whole new experience.
People were standing exactly where I was standing hundreds of years ago.
The home served as part of the anti-slavery movement from 1855 all the way up until the abolition of slavery. And the secret was kept for many more years due to fear of the family's safety. This home is just one of many that helped fight to break the chains of slavery.
Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
My name is Armin Bragg, and I've been a member of 16th Street for over 60 years.
The 16th Street Baptist Church marks a turning point of the civil rights movement. On September 15, 1963, this Birmingham church was the site of a horrific bombing. Several sticks of dynamite attached to a timing device went off at 10:22 a.m., killing 4 young girls attending Sunday school and injuring more than 20 other members of the congregation. Armin Bragg was at work that day, unloading a shipment in the basement of a nearby department store.
We didn't hear anything about the bombing. About 3 or 4 o'clock, I got off that afternoon and I was headed home and I saw the police cars roaming the streets and I was wondering what was going on. So I turned the radio on, found a news station, and about halfway home heard that the 16th Street Baptist Church had been bombed. Later on that evening, we found out that the 4 girls had been killed.
The vicious crime produced an outpouring of sympathy and concern as news spread of the white supremacist terrorist act. Following the bombing, more than $300,000 were contributed to restore the church, which was reopened the following year. Perhaps most unexpected was a gift that came from across the Atlantic Ocean.
Somewhere along around 1965, we received this window from the people of Wales, UK, and the guy that did the window is named John Petts, and he wanted to make a statement with the window. So he showed a black man hanging on the cross like Christ, and with the one hand he's pushing out against segregation and oppression, and with the other hand he's reaching for forgiveness and reconciliation.
Through 10 years of trips, a special bond has been created with the city of Birmingham. With a racial makeup of more than 70% of its population being black, the city has worked to heal the racial wounds of its past.
We're really now seeing the fruits of that civil rights struggle in the city of Birmingham, a dynamic, multiracial city, which is exactly what Martin Luther King envisioned for such a great community.
The kids are given a behind-the-scenes look at the fire department, community outreach efforts through the police department, and the city's youth services program. Throughout the day, the kids were introduced to black leaders in the city, including Mayor Randall Woodfin.
I think my favorite part was just seeing all of these young black men and women in leadership positions. I don't see that in a lot of places, and to see that in Birmingham, Alabama was just life-changing and very inspiring to see.
That was big to me because they literally really walked on that bridge and they really that. It's all real. That was a big thing for me.
You get to actually see it in person and you get to experience it.
From the voting rights marches to the bus boycott, Montgomery was center stage for many crucial events of the civil rights movement. And with Governor George Wallace, a staunch segregationist, leading the capital, the fight for equal treatment was met with resistance at every step. A stop at the Rosa Parks Library and Museum demonstrates how strategy was key to gaining ground in the battle for social justice. Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat is well documented.
Are you going to stand up? No.
But what seemed like a random act of defiance was actually a well-calculated strategy. The bus boycott began on December 5th, 1955, the day following the arrest of Mrs. Parks. Prior to that day, months of planning was done to organize the boycott, including lining up rides for thousands of people who normally relied on the transit system. This strategy delivered a combination blow, costing the Montgomery City lines between 30,000 and 40,000 bus fares each day, and fueling media attention on the boycott, which only ended when a Supreme Court ruling declared the laws unconstitutional. It's that type of depth of detail and history that reaches students.
And it's important to understand that and the struggles that they went through.
To not have the luxury, to not have to go through the same things just because all the hard times and suffering that they had to go to.
So that means success. That means somebody was touched and they felt what it was like back then and they want to make a change.
Students also had the opportunity to hear from Jean Grates, who worked alongside her husband, Pastor Robert Grates, to help organize the bus boycott. Next up, the Dexter Avenue King Memorial Baptist Church, a central meeting spot for organizers of the civil rights movement. It's also where Martin Luther King Jr. continued his work as a pastor from 1954 to 1960.
I said, how long? How long? All right.
And during his time with the church, Dr. King and his young family lived here. On the front porch is a plaque, which commemorates the day the home was bombed in retaliation to the bus boycott. Dr. King wasn't home at the time, but his wife and child were. Fortunately, no one was injured. The Dexter Parsonage Museum recounts how an angry mob of church members and civil rights supporters showed up outside the home that evening. Dr. King calmed the crowd by pleading for nonviolence, saying, "I want you to love our enemies, be good to them. This is what we must live by. We must meet hate with love." Our final stop in Montgomery was the Civil Rights Memorial, hosted by the Southern Poverty Law Center. The memorial honors those who have died during the struggle for equal treatment of all people, regardless of race. At the end of the experience, visitors are invited to sign the Wall of Tolerance, which digitally displays the names of more than 500,000 people who have pledged to take a stand against hate and work for justice. Atlanta is known as the cradle of the civil rights movement. It served as the epicenter during the battle for justice, a hub for leaders who fought for voting rights, equal treatment, and economical and educational opportunities. It's also the birthplace of Martin Luther King Jr., and his former home in the Sweet Auburn neighborhood has been preserved. Just down the street from his childhood home stands the Ebenezer Baptist Church, where for 8 years Reverend King Jr. shared the pulpit with his father. The King Center serves as an archival exhibition of the impact Dr. King had. Hundreds of photographs, teachings, and speech transcripts line the walls. Outside, in the center of a reflecting pool, rests the King Crypt, a marble memorial for Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. Soaking in the message of Dr. King is only part of the purpose of this trip.
I'm just hoping and praying that they can go back and teach a friend or two or a family member or sibling some of the stuff that they've learned.
And then I'll start just by teaching family members, so then they could get a wider base and then just learn more.
Live in that moment and then also take it back with you.
Another lesson learned on the trip has to do with a different country's disgraceful history of organized discrimination. The William Bremen Jewish Heritage Museum provides visitors with an overview of the Holocaust. The gruesome history of Nazi Germany provides an opportunity to reflect on another group's struggle, taking note of the similarities in suffering.
We could dive deeper into other cultures because every culture has been through something.
Along the trip, the tour visits several HBCU campuses, creating the opportunity to feel out different universities and talk to students about campus experience.
I still have a few years in school, and being able to get that information before I actually have to decide is very helpful.
I felt like the people that showed us around really gave us examples in their experiences, and I felt like that helped a lot.
UAPB 1873!
They're all like one family. I like the fact that you get to know your teacher. If you need help, you go talk to them.
Former students have even chosen a college after attending the trip.
It made me want to go to an HBCU, be around the culture and learn about myself.
Being around people as African Americans that's doing, positive things, the same color as you, the same age as you, really want to get out there and learn and do better.
The exposure to black colleges provides important motivation for these young adults.
This is the really critical time in their life. You're going to become an adult. So now is the time for you to get serious. It's time for you to get out there, figure out what it is, what you want to do.
We can be whatever in life, doctors, lawyers. I like that.
Over the past decade, more than 600 kids have had the opportunity to experience this civil rights trip.
It's so great, and I recommend it for anybody.
And I feel like every time you come, you learn something new.
You get to experience a lot of different places. It's just a great experience to have.
This trip instills the principles that drove the civil rights movement into the next generation fighting for social justice.
Stand up for what you believe is right, no matter what circumstances come your way.
People understand the history and they want to better themselves. Everyone wants to achieve great things.
Living off that, coming together as one, that would be the greatest thing America has ever done.
And with continued leadership, the future looks promising.
At the end, always important to me when I hear kids saying, oh, this is what I'm gonna do different. This is how this is affecting me. This is why I wanna go to school.
There's a saying that goes, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. In order to make change, you need to be involved. You need to register to vote. You need to address injustices. So I'm hoping the kids take that away from this.
It's really important that we actually live in it and be with people that have lived in it.